Hi, I'm Anissa with Pure Landscape from Goodyear, Arizona. I wanted to talk today just about some super basic material on an irrigation timer that pretty much every homeowner is going to have. Some homeowners are intimidated by the timer. They're not sure how to operate it, they're not sure what to do with it, when to call somebody in, do they need to worry about it at all. If you move into a new home and you've got your timer and you've never touched it, you're going to want to get a little bit familiar with it, just enough to kind of operate the basics and at least understand what you've got to work with. This right here is a pretty typical timer that any homeowner would have. By the time you watch this video, this may or may not be the current version of the timer, but it's going to be pretty similar regardless. So conceptually, you've got a timer that controls through electricity when your valves come on and off, and in turn water your plants and your trees and your grass if you have it. So this timer is wired to your electrical panel. The timer is typically located right next to your electrical panel. Sometimes they're in the garage on the other side of the panel, but usually they're outside just like this. So this timer is wired electrically, and then there are wires that go from this timer down to your valves. I'm going to open this up real quick so that you can see how do you figure out how many valves you have and what they do. This panel typically just pops right off, and you're going to see a series of wires here that are connected by just a little screw that you can loosen and tighten with a screwdriver. These are labeled right here. The numbered areas is what you want to pay attention to. This timer is capable of 8 stations. So you've got 1 through 8 right here. Forget these. This is the ground wire, and this is the wire that's bringing power to the timer. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 hooked up. So we know right now that we have 4 valves. Now, how do you know what wire number 1, 2, 3, 4 does? A great way to figure that out is to just run a quick manual start on your timer and put it on program 1, turn it on, see what comes on. If you see watering come out of your trees, then you know valve 1 is watering my trees. How do you do a manual start? It's always a good idea to know how to run a manual start on your timer. It can help you in troubleshooting. You can use that function to water on a regular basis if you don't want to mess with having to figure out how to program the timer. So I'm going to do a manual start right now on valve number 1, and we'll see what happens. Right now the timer is set to the system off position. Nothing's going to run ever right now, regardless of what might be programmed in here. To do a manual start on valve 1, I'm just going to flip it to this setting, which says manual 1 station. I'm going to make sure I'm on valve number 1. I can rotate through 1, 2, 3, 4 by hitting this button, but I want to be on valve number 1 because that's the one I'm testing. I need to give it some minutes. Right now it says 0 minutes. I just need to give it any amount of minutes to allow it to come on. So you just turn on for a couple minutes, it doesn't really matter. Flip it to run. You may not have heard it, but there was a little click noise over there by the backflow. We heard water start to come through. Right now valve 1 is running. I happen to know that valve 1 is operating the dog run on the other side of the property, so you can't see it from here. So if we didn't know that, we would go under the plants or the trees, we would look at the emitters and see if some water was coming out. If I wanted it to run for 15 minutes, perfect. If I want to just use manual start as the way that I water my plants, maybe I would have set that for 3 hours. And as soon as I hit run, it would go ahead and run for 3 hours. Then I could come back out here. If I think there's a program in here and I don't know what it is because I'm new to the property, I'm afraid of it, it might be complicated, it might be too much. After that 3 hours is done, as long as I turn it back to the system off position, it's never going to come on again until I run another manual start. So you're going to want to get familiar with how many valves do I have, what does each one function. Once you figure out and you identify valve 1 is the dog run, 2 is the shrubs, 3 is the trees, 4 is the grass, whatever it is, make yourself a little legend so you know what they are, so that you know when I want to water my shrubs, I can look at my legend and come out and just do the valve that's for the shrubs. That's pretty much the basics. If you don't want to get involved in running a program, you can always just do a manual start. That's it for today. I'll see you next time.